You ever notice how loud desperation is? It stomps around, kicks things over, screams for answers like volume equals power. But the funny thing, power doesn't yell. It whispers, it waits. And the ones who really get it, they don't need to bark. They go quiet, not weak, not passive, just still. Because they've realized something most people never do. Real strength isn't in the noise, it's in the restrained silence, The thing people run from like it's a curse. Like if they sit still long enough, the voices might catch up. And they're right, they do. But maybe that's the point. See, silence isn't weakness. It's not surrender. It's not you backing down, crawling away, folding under pressure. No, it's strategy. It's surgical. It's a choice to observe when others perform. To absorb when others explode. To think when everyone else is too busy trying to be heard. You ever watch a room full of people all talking at once? Everyone desperate to be the smartest, the loudest, the rightest. And there you are, just sitting, watching. Not because you've got nothing to say, but because you've got too much to say and none of it's for them. That's when you realize something dangerous. Your silence makes people nervous. Your quiet, it exposes their noise. Your stillness, it mirrors their chaos. They think if you're not speaking, you're weak. But the truth is, if you were speaking, the whole room would shift, and they know it. People panic in silence because it doesn't feed their ego. It doesn't applaud their performance. It doesn't dance for attention. Silence is the opposite of the stage. It's the back room, the war room, the cold place where strategy gets built while everyone else is playing checkers on the floor. You don't scream in silence. You study, you pick up patterns, you catch contradictions. You see exactly who's pretending and who's panicking. That's power they can't understand. Power that doesn't need to be performed to be real. And let's not confuse silence with passivity. Oh no, passive people avoid conflict because they're afraid. Strategic silence is something else. It's restraint, discipline. You feel everything, but you don't react. You know what you could say, what you could do. But you don't. Not because you're soft, but because you're smart enough to know that explosions make noise, but snipers end things quietly. Let them underestimate you. Let them think your silence is a flaw. That's what makes it lethal. They fill the air with noise, with bluff, with posturing, and while they're busy trying to win the room, you're already 10 moves ahead. Because real power isn't loud, it's focused, it's surgical. And silence is its favorite weapon. You don't need to respond to every accusation. Don't need to post every win. Don't need to prove your point. To people who've already decided they won't get it, that's the trap, that's the bait. They want you to react so they can reduce you. So they can drag you back into the mud and call it a debate. But when you stay silent, you deny them access, you starve the fire, you walk away with your dignity intact and your power multiplied. You know what silence does to your enemies. It makes them paranoid. They start filling in the blanks with their own fears. They start thinking, what are they planning? Why are they clapping back? What do they know that I don't? Your silence becomes noise in their head, echoes that don't stop. And the best part, you didn't even lift a finger, but silence isn't just for them. It's for you. It's where clarity shows up, where you stop performing and start listening, where all the things you've drowned out with noise and distraction finally rise to the surface. Your thoughts, your fears. It all gets loud in the quiet, and that's where you decide who you are without the crowd, without the applause, without the validation. That's where you become dangerous. People are addicted to noise because noise gives the illusion of escape. Like if they're busy enough, loud enough, seen enough, they must be winning. But you've seen through that. You've tasted the hollowness of it. You've felt the exhaustion of trying to keep up, trying to be heard in a world that never listens. And now you're choosing the other path, the slower, sharper, quieter one. The one that feels like nothing until it suddenly becomes everything. The ones who win long term. They're not the ones who shouted the most. They're the ones who learned how to wait, how to hold their tongue when their ego begged to speak, how to disappear when pride demanded attention, how to observe, to listen, to plan. Because when the moment finally comes, when it's time to speak, to act, to move, it won't be noise. It'll be precision, and no one will see it coming. Because while they were shouting, you were sharpening humility. Now there's a word people love to tattoo on their mouths, but not their actions. Everyone wants to look humble, post the right quotes, bow their heads at just the right angle, smile with their mouths, but not their bowers. But humility isn't a costume. It's not polite language or gentle tones. It's blood. It's grit. It's swallowing every ounce of pride when your flesh wants revenge. It's kneeling when your ego wants a throne. And let me tell you, true humility, it hurts. Because it doesn't just ask you to shrink, it asks you to be okay with shrinking while someone else is parading. While lies win in public and truth bleeds in private. While you get overlooked, underestimated, ignored. Humility says, take it, let it hit. Don't strike back. And everything in you screams, but they're wrong. But I'm right. And humility smiles and says, I know. Now hush, see, you don't learn humility in comfort. You learn it in humiliation. When you're misunderstood, when you're mocked, when your silence is mistaken for weakness. That's where humility is born, not from praise, but from pressure. Not when you get the credit, but when you watch someone else steal your work and God tells you to leave, so let them. Not when you're strong, but when you're shattered and still refuse to take the low road. People think humility is about thinking less of yourself. No, it's thinking of yourself less. You can still know who you are. You can still walk like fire's in your bones. But you don't need to scream about it. You don't need to flash your badge every 5 seconds. You don't need the crowd. You've got your orders, and if no one claps, if no one posts your name, if no one ever sees the hell you crawled through, you still go, because humility isn't for show. It's for survival. It keeps you grounded when favor comes fast. It keeps your hands clean when offense wants to stain them. It keeps you close to God when applause tries to build a stage beneath your feet. Because pride builds fast and falls harder, but humility builds slow, quiet, steady, like a foundation no storm can crack. You ever notice how pride talks loud when it's afraid? It covers insecurity with volume, with titles, with comparisons. But humility doesn't panic. It doesn't scramble to prove. It doesn't need to correct every fool. It knows who it serves. It knows who's watching. And it knows this game ain't about proving, it's about passing every test, every betrayal, every silent season, every unseen obedience, passing it like fire through clenched teeth and closed lips. And what's the hardest part? Not when they hate you. No, when they praise you. When the compliments start rolling in like candy. When people start using your name more than they use their own. That's the real danger. Because pride doesn't always show up with a snarl, it shows up with a smile, with a mic, with a platform. And humility has to fight to keep the volume down. Remember that it's not you, it's not you. Always grace. Sometimes God hides you on purpose. Not because you're not ready for them, but because they're not ready for you. And if He exposed you too soon, their claps would drown out His voice in your head. So He keeps you low. Keeps you quiet, not because He's punishing you, but because He's protecting the purity of your mission. Humility makes you obedient without needing validation, makes you move without needing permission, makes you invisible without becoming bitter. You don't bow because you're broken. You bow because you know who's really running the show. And every time you humble yourself, you remind hell that it doesn't own your reactions. You remind your flesh that it doesn't sit on the throne. And you remind heaven that you can be trusted with weight, with power, with favor that won't make you fall in love with your own reflection. Humility teaches you to sit when you deserve the mic, to stay when you want to leave, to serve when you want to shine. And it's not glamorous, it's not trending. It won't win you followers, but it'll win you access to rooms ego can't enter, to doors pride can't unlock, to favor that doesn't need a filter or a hashtag, because God doesn't build with noise, He builds with surrender. And if you're still addicted to being seen, you'll miss the architecture of the unseen being built inside you, where no one's looking, the loudest ones in the room. They're usually the ones trying the hardest not to be seen. Oh, they talk a big game, sure. Smiles like masks, confidence stitched together with fear and caffeine. They speak over everyone because silence makes them itch. But what they're really afraid of is what's underneath all that volume. Because once the noise stops, they've got nothing left to stand on. And if you listen closely, if you really listen, you'll hear it. Empty souls echoing in high-definition sound, the need to be loud, to be noticed, to always be right. It's not power. It's panic dressed up as authority. It's ego screaming for attention before someone figures out it's all just mirrors and wires. A loud room is the perfect place to hide. No one questions the one who never shuts up. No one suspects the one throwing jokes like grenades. They just assume loud means strong. Funny how wrong assumptions can be. You sit in that room quiet, still, unbothered. Not because you've got nothing to say, but because you've got nothing to prove. That's what shakes them. That you don't need the stage. That you're comfortable in your corner watching everything, missing nothing. Because you learn something dangerous, silence is not. Absence, it's observation. It's preparation. It's the calm before your kind of storm. They mistake your silence for lack of depth. But you've been busy building trenches while they've been painting over cracks. You've done the hard work, the dark work, the invisible work. You've been in the shadows where the real healing happens, where the pride gets peeled off and the truth comes bleeding through. That's why you're not loud, not anymore. You were once. Thought noise meant significance. I thought if enough people heard you, you'd finally believe in yourself. But all the noise in the world can't fix a soul that's starving, so you turned it off. You unplugged. You sat in the silence and let it stretch you. Let it break you. Let it show you who you really were without the likes, without the applause, without the look at me. And what did you find? Not emptiness, but focus. Not fear, but fire. The kind that doesn't need to be broadcasted to burn everything down. The kind that speaks only when it must. And when it does, it cuts deeper than any scream ever could. You learned that silence doesn't mean weak. It means free. Free from the addiction to be heard by people who wouldn't know what to do with your truth anyway. Free from the urge to explain your worth to people who already decided they'd never see it. Free from the circus act, the performance, the exhausting theater of being enough. Because once you know who you are in the silence, the noise just sounds like static, and still they talk. They fill every space with sound, hoping no one notices the cracks. They argue to feel alive. They shout over each other like volume wins battles, but they're not fighting for truth, they're fighting to be seen. And in that fight, they lose themselves. They trade authenticity for applause. They sell their peace for a platform. And they wonder why they feel hollow with a microphone in their hand. But you're dangerous now, not because you yell, but because you don't have to. You've got gravity, presence, the kind of weight that makes people stop mid-sentence when you finally speak. You've got the kind of clarity that doesn't beg to be believed. You don't chase attention anymore. You move in silence, and silence follows you. You don't need a stage to feel powerful. You are the power, and they feel it, even when you say nothing. Especially when you say nothing, you see them though. The ones trying to keep the mask from slipping. The ones cracking jokes a little too loud. The ones repeating the same story, hoping someone finally believes it. You don't hate them. You just know them because you were them, but not anymore. Now you've chosen something rarer, something sacred. You've chosen to be whole in a world that rewards hollow. Let them keep filling the room with sound. You found your home in the quiet, because silence doesn't mean you've got nothing to say. It means you've learned when it actually matters. And most of the time it doesn't. Let the loud ones perform. Let the empty ones echo. You've got nothing left to prove and everything left to become staying low. Funny how they all think that's failure. As if being unseen is some sort of punishment. as if the spotlight decides who's valuable and who's not. They measure success in noise and applause and shiny things thrown at shallow people. But see, there's a secret nobody likes to say out loud. The higher you go, the dumber the air gets. Everyone's gasping for attention, suffocating for approval, dying to be admired by people who couldn't carry half their truth if they tried. But down here, down low, it's different. Quiet, grounded, no pressure to perform. No expectations to meet, no image to protect, just you, the dirt, and whatever fire's still burning in your gut. People think it's weakness staying small, staying silent, staying out of the mess. But sometimes staying low is the only way to survive the weight of the calling. Because let me tell you what's real, it's heavy. It doesn't float. It roots itself deep. Where the storms can't touch it, up there it's all about the show. Down here it's about the work. The actual digging, building, bleeding kind of work. No one claps for the foundation, but try building anything without it. Try standing when the pressure hits, when the lies start flying. When your name gets twisted into something it's not. That's when being low saves you. That's when you thank the silence, the shadows, the hidden place that built you without needing to be seen. But it's not just protection. It's positioning. Because only the humble survive the weight of being elevated. The ones who've been low long enough to know they're not better than anybody else. The ones who've eaten enough dirt to never look down on someone still crawling through it. The ones who've learned how to listen before they talk, serve before they shine, obey before they command. Staying low teaches you that leadership isn't about being followed, it's about being anchored. You ever see how a storm hits a tree? The tall ones break first, the shallow ones fall fast, but the ones with roots, real roots, those stand. And they didn't get those roots by chasing the sun. They got him in the dark, in the struggle, in the mud. Staying low gave them depth. And that depth, that's the only reason they're still standing when the wind shows up asking questions. But here's the twisted part: sometimes the very people who look down on you now will come running back. When the house they built on applause starts to collapse, they'll remember the one who stayed low. The one who didn't sell out for attention. The one who had the guts to go quiet when everyone else was screaming for validation. Because noise fades, trends die, but truth doesn't need a trend. There's something sacred about being low. You see more, you feel more. You hear the things people up high forgot how to listen for. And most importantly, you remember who you are. Because up there it's easy to lose yourself, to become what they expect instead of who you were built to be. But down here it's just you and the fire. No distractions, no filters, just the raw version of you. The one that doesn't need a stage to matter. You ever notice how dangerous quiet people are? Not the passive kind, the aware kind, the ones who are watching, learning, discerning. They've got this weight to them, this stillness that makes people uncomfortable, because you can't predict them. Can't control them, can't manipulate them with praise or pressure. They don't rise for claps, they rise when it's time. And when they do, it's not for show. It's for impact. So while everyone else is busy trying to go viral, you stay rooted, you stay grounded, you stay low, not because you're scared, but because you know. You know that timing is everything. You know that premature exposure is a curse, not a blessing. You know that some doors are best left closed until you're strong enough to walk through them without breaking. You know that if you skip the low places, you miss the very thing that gives your rise meaning. They'll call you small. They'll call you scared. They'll call you late. Let him. Because when it's your time, they won't see you coming. And they won't know what to do with you when you arrive. Because the one who stayed low becomes the one no storm then move. And by the time they realize it, you'll already be 10 steps ahead, not because you rushed, but because you endured where they refused to kneel. Funny thing about noise, it's addictive. Not because it brings clarity, but because it drowns out the discomfort. Drowns out that little voice, the one you keep shoving into corners, locking behind grins, suffocating with distractions. And yet the voice never dies, it just waits. Waits for you to finally get tired of performing, tired of pretending, tired of proving your worth to crowds too shallow to hold it. And when the lights go off and the noise fades, that's when it speaks again. That's when the real conversation starts. But most can't stand that silence, so they fill it. Fill it with plans, posts, prayers they don't mean. Fill it with movement to feel like progress, but deep down they know it's all theater. They're not really listening. They're performing obedience, hoping God's fooled by volume. As if shouting his name louder will cover the fact they don't actually trust him. That's why he goes quiet sometimes, not to punish, but to provoke. To ask, will you follow when it's just me in the stillness? See, when you stop performing, when you stop doing spiritual gymnastics for approval, when you finally sit still, that's when the shift begins. That's when God starts saying things you don't want to hear but absolutely need to. And most won't like it because it's not wrapped in applause, it's not comfortable. It's confronting. But in that confrontation, there's healing, there's direction, there's clarity, but only if you're done playing.